Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. So I'm pretty sure you've heard many times from atheists who actually associate all religions to being a cult. So you see Sandra Weatherly, who says here, I don't care, sorry, simply because I believe all religions are cults. I am a non-believer, all the best. So basically, 9 out of 10, this person is either an agnostic or an atheist. I'm not really getting a response from him. But when they associate all religion to being a cult, you can actually associate that claim to New Age atheism. Because back centuries ago, atheism, I agree, wasn't a cult. It was just, the basic belief of non-belief, the lack of belief, as they say. But now it's become a movement. And we're going to look into what ChatGPT says in regards to this. So the first question I asked ChatGPT, I said, can atheism be considered a cult? And this is what they wrote. They said, atheism is generally not considered a cult. Atheism is simply the lack of belief in gods or deities, rather than a belief system or organized group with specific rituals, doctrines, or leadership structures, key characteristics that typically define a cult. Cults are often characterized by a strong centralized authority figure, a rigid belief system, and practices designed to control or manipulate followers. Atheism, on the other hand, is not an organized movement, but rather a personal stance or worldview regarding the existence of deities. They then write, while certain groups or ideologies that promote atheism might have characteristics of a cult, atheism itself, as a lack of belief in gods, does not meet the criteria of a cult. So then I pushed ChatGPT because they kind of spilled the beans, right? They said, well, there are some groups that show the characteristics of a cult. So then I said to ChatGPT, I said, can you give an example of a certain atheist groups that have characteristics of a cult? And this is what they write. While atheism in its essence is simply a lack of belief in gods or deities and doesn't inherently form organized groups or cults, there have been instances where certain atheist groups or movements have been criticized for displaying cult-like characteristics. These groups often go beyond mere atheism and adopt rigid, hierarchical structures or promote a specific ideology in ways that can be seen as manipulative. And here are some examples. Number 1. The Atheism Plus movement, Atheism Plus. Background. Atheism Plus emerged in the early 2010s. Remember what I said, how they emerged later on. 2010, as a movement that sought to combine atheism with a focus on social justice issues, particularly related to feminism and equality. Criticism. Some critics argue that it became overly dogmatic, promoting certain social justice positions as non-negotiable and silencing dissent within the community. People who disagreed with its specific stance were sometimes labeled as not truly progressive atheists, creating an exclusionary environment similar to the in-group mentality often seen in cults. Cult-like characteristics. The movement's rigid ideological stance, its tendency to ostracize critics, and the pressure to conform to its specific social and political viewpoints are some of the aspects that led to comparisons with cult-like behavior. Number 2. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Background. Although this is generally a satirical movement created as a critique of organized religion, some of its followers have adopted it in a more serious manner, seeing it as a sort of alternative belief system. Criticism. While it is not a cult in the traditional sense, some have argued that the movement's fervent defense of its principles and its insistence on mockingly adopting religious-like practices could, in some cases, exhibit cult-like devotion, especially if followers treat the beliefs as unchallengeable or form strong social pressure within the group. Cult-like characteristics. The sense of us versus them that sometimes arises between adherents of Pastafarianism and traditional religious groups can foster an exclusionary or insular dynamic akin to some characteristics of cults. New atheism, prominent figures like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. Background. The New Atheism movement, popularized by figures such as Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens, advocates for a more outspoken and militant form of atheism, challenging the role of religion in society. Criticism. Some of its critics argue that the movement became intolerant of those with different views, particularly in regard to religion. The aggressive rhetoric used by some of its proponents could alienate moderate atheists or religious individuals, and the movement's tendencies to present atheism as a superior or only rational worldview sometimes mirrors a dogmatic belief system. Cult-like characteristics. The strong sense of ideological purity, the us versus them mentality against religious believers, and the sometimes uncritical devotion to the movement's central figures have drawn comparison to cult-like behavior. General notes on atheist groups and cult-like behavior. It's important to note that while these examples show certain groups where elements of cult-like behavior may have emerged, they don't represent atheism as a whole. Atheism in its core form is simply the absence of belief in gods, and many atheists don't belong to any organized groups or movements at all. The example above represents cases where groups, often in the context of social or political activism, took on characteristics of inclusion, rigid ideology, and strong in-group loyalty, which can be features of cult-like behavior. However, none of these groups should be seen as representative of atheism itself, which in the broader sense is simply a stance on belief in deities and does not necessarily imply any organized structure or dogma. So there you have it, folks. I agree with them. The original ideology of atheism was basically simple, the non-belief in God, and that's it. But now it has become a cult-like figure with modern atheistic movements. And we actually see this behavior. So you'll see how they even have their own churches now. They have what we call T-shirts. They wear this hat to resemble atheism. So they'll have that letter A, the symbol. You know, it's like they have their own symbols now. So the religious symbols, you can see the A. They've got the atheist churches, monuments to atheism now. They've got atheist televangelism. They've got atheist leadership and atheist creation myth. I'll put a link here about what happens at an atheist church. You can read about it all here. So, right. So they have atheist dower. They put signs up. There's probably no God, as you can see here. And we can get into other things. They've sort of substituted God for Mother Nature. God is Mother Nature that created the complex universe and all living things and living matter. Their prophets are Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens. Their testimony of faith is there is no God but Mother Nature. Their religious books are End of Faith, God Delusion, The Origin of Species. Belief in the afterlife, their corpse will just become worm food and become a fertilizer for the next life. They have their religious festivals like the gay Mardi Gras. Their religion also has a political motive, want to dominate the world under secular thought process. Their religion, or cult I should say, faith, God almost certainly does not exist, even though they don't possess all the information in the universe to draw such conclusions. They have faith that it was Mother Nature that created our universe alone. They have faith in the interpretation of fossil record that could be interpreted in multiple ways, yet only believe their interpretation is the only correct one. They have faith that Dawkins is telling the truth, that he is almost certain that God does not exist. Number 9, spiritualization. They like to do personal meditation for biological healing by smoking weed and indulging in virtual pornography. Number 10, they like to imagine angels or jinns may exist in the form of aliens and entertain their existence somewhere out in space. Number 11, they believe in the human spirit. They just call it energy. They have religious uniforms, the black t-shirt, as we just mentioned, the letter A printed on them. Number 13, they usually have the same moral and ideological beliefs or a majority consensus view on, such as, remember what we spoke about before, how it's become like a cult-like figure. If you disagree with them, you're an outcast. And these majority consensus that they have is things like support same-sex marriages, legalization of drugs, abortion is fine, consensual adultery is fine, separation between church and state, porn is cool, nothing wrong with it, everyone else's religion is wrong, everyone else's religion should be destroyed, everyone else's religion banned from schools. Number 14, they also believe in Dawa, atheist propagation movement, calling to atheism. They usually sit all day long on the internet trying to convert people to atheistic religion or cult. They have also opened new atheist churches, believe it or not, and so forth. So yeah, maybe ancient atheists were not a religious group or a cult as it's described, but today's modern new age atheists sure are dogmatic and show characteristics of cult-like figure, and who are anti-religious zealots. What is interesting is atheist apostasy law. They even have some sort of an apostasy law in atheism. The link between belief and behavior raises the stakes considerably. Some propositions are so dangerous that it may even be ethical to kill people for believing in them. This is Sam Harris in the End of Faith book, where he writes, have a listen, the link between belief and behavior raises the stakes considerably. Some propositions are so dangerous that it may even be ethical to kill people for believing in them. So here you have Sam Harris, who is encouraging apostasy. Anyone who believes other than what we believe in, then we could kill them. They are so dangerous that it should be killed. And we know that, folks, because how many times have you heard an atheist say, religion is a cancer, we need to get rid of the root of all evil. We need to get rid of all evil, right? They need to they're going to take over the world. We need to get rid of them all, right? So they're actually preaching extermination of religious people. This is what they're preaching, right? Really. So yes, one who is associated with the atheistic movement, the modern movement, can be associated to cult-like characteristics. There you go. So atheists, tone it down when you want to depict religion as a cult, when we can point the finger at you.